What's on your ballot? 2018 state ballot proposals. Pro and con.
I am Sue Smith. I'm president of the Ann Arbor Area League of Women Voters. As Marissa said, we are a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose parties or candidates. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. Tonight is an educational presentation, presenting information on the proposals, on what the pros and cons groups have said, and how it would work if it was passed. We actually have two sets of ballot proposals. I'll be talking about the state ballot proposals, and then we'll spend a few minutes talking about the three Ann Arbor ballot proposals. So there'll be a short break. If you're not from Ann Arbor, you don't particularly want to hear about the Ann Arbor ballot proposals, of course, there'll be an opportunity for you to leave. In addition to the short presentation I have on the Ann Arbor ballot proposals this evening, I wanted to announce that there will be a league forum in this room on October 25th at the same time from 7 to 8:30 on just the library lot, Proposal A. And we will have representatives from those who are for it and those who are against it here to talk about it and answer your questions. So if you'd like to learn more about Proposal A, then I'm able to tell you in the short time we have this evening. I'll put that on your calendar, Thursday, October 25th, 7 o'clock in this room. The state ballot proposal presentation is being given all over the state of Michigan. I did one in Mount Pleasant a couple weeks ago. I'll be in a suburb of northern Detroit in the middle of the month. And we have a number of them here in the Ann Arbor area. We had one in Chelsea last week. Tonight, Wednesday night, we're at Westgate Branch, same time, 7 o'clock. And then we have two in Ypsilanti. So if you have friends and neighbors who couldn't make it tonight and are interested, those are opportunities as well. And if you look on the Ann Arbor League website, lwvannarbor.org, you will find the calendar that lists all those dates and places. I hope when you came in that you picked up three things: promote the vote, a sheet on redistricting in Michigan, and the 2018 statewide ballot proposals. The statewide ballot proposals is two-sided, and it has the language you will actually see on the ballot. So I'm going to walk over here so I don't have to hide behind the lectern. And I'm a former school teacher, so I'm used to kind of walking around, so I don't want to be stationed in one place. So here then are the statewide proposals. We want you to know what the ballot language is, and you have a copy that you can take home, what you're actually going to see on the ballot, how it would actually work if it were to pass, what are the pros and cons according to the people who support or oppose them, and who are the folks that are supporting and opposing. And then please note the bottom line: the league is not responsible for the views or facts provided by the groups. They told us, we put it up here, we're passing it along to you. We are not verifying, we have not verified whether what they say is true or not. There are only three ballot proposals that made it to the ballot. Now, there were a lot more initially, or everybody thought there would be a lot more. Some of them didn't get enough signatures. The renewables proposal was withdrawn from consideration because the people who were in favor of the renewables proposal struck a deal with the state of Michigan, and so they decided they didn't need to go forward. But we do have three left. There were two others. You might remember hearing about minimum wage and sick leave, and you wonder what happened to them. Well, the legislature, as it can do and does quite often these days, decided to pass legislation that was the same as the ballot proposal that would have been on the ballot. And by doing that, it took it off the ballot. Now, in Michigan, we are really fortunate that we can, as citizens, get it on the ballot. In many states, only the legislative body can put it on the ballot. But in Michigan, we have the opportunity to put it on the ballot, and there are two kinds of initiatives that we can put on. One is a voter-initiated law. That means we decide to write the legislation. And of course, the legislature can change it because it's legislation. That's what happened with the emergency manager law. And actually, since the minimum wage and sick leave ballot proposals were legislative, by passing legislation, the legislature could remove it from the ballot. Now, they tried to do that with the marijuana ballot proposal, but they couldn't get enough votes to do that in the legislature. And so that one stayed on. Then there are two constitutional amendments put there by citizen petition, and of course the legislature can't do anything about those. So on these ballot proposals, these three ballot proposals that you'll see on the ballot, a simple majority is needed to approve it. The marijuana one would take effect 10 days after the Secretary of State officially declares the vote. And the amendments, if passed, would become part of the Constitution 45 days after the date of the election. So, of course, a constitutional amendment actually modifies the Constitution, and the legislature cannot change it. A citizen's initiative can either be for a constitutional amendment or it can be a legislative one. And if it's a legislative one, then, as I said, the legislature can change the law by 3/4 vote in each of the chambers. So these are the three. Number one would regulate marijuana like alcohol. These are the names of the petitions. Number two is the one put forth by Voters Not Politicians for redistricting reform. And number three is a voting rights amendment to the Constitution, promote the vote. And I'm going to explain each one of those. The actual wording that you see on the ballot has been approved by the Board of State Canvassers, which is made up of 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. As you might think, if it's something that's controversial, it's not easy to get them, at least 3 of those 4, to agree to the 100 words that are going to be on the ballot. So these 100 words are the ones that were approved by the Board of State Canvassers. And you can see it's to authorize and legalize possession, use, and cultivation of marijuana products by individuals at least 21 years of age and commercial sales. And then it talks about 21 older to purchase, 10-ounce limit on the marijuana that can be kept at residences, and anything over 2.5 ounces has to be secured in locked containers. There would be a state licensing system. There would be a 10% excise tax in addition to the 6% sales tax. And it would change violations from crimes to civil infractions. Now, some people have asked, if you've already been convicted under the previous law, can your sentence been changed? They wanted to put that in the proposal, but it was unconstitutional to include both of those, both this and the idea of changing previous convictions to civil crimes, so they couldn't do that. So then you vote yes or no. Of course, it would legalize recreational use. We already have medical use of marijuana in our state. Taxing revenue, there'd be rules, of course, and there'd be penalties for people who broke the law. And this shows where marijuana is legal. In green is both recreational and medical marijuana is legal. The light blue, medical marijuana, and of course you see Michigan is there, and the white is neither. Okay, the people who want you to vote for it are saying, well, it's a sensible alternative to Michigan's failed policy of marijuana prohibition. It would position Michigan as a national leader in the adoption of smart adult use marijuana laws. It would create a state-regulated system, and it would enact an excise tax at the retail level of 10% in addition to the standard sales tax. And these are the supporters. Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol. I'm American Civil Liberties Union. And then these other ones as well. The people who want you to vote no are saying, well, the recreational marijuana industry targets young people. Makes for dangerous drivers. Not the marijuana previous generations used. Increases criminal activity, not good for our economy, and creates confusion between recreational and medical marijuana regulation and taxation. Now the source you can see is at the bottom, a group called the Healthy and Productive Michigan, and you can go to their website. Those who oppose, again, the Healthy and Productive Michigan, and there's their website. Committee to Keep Pot Out of Neighborhoods and Schools, the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, Smart Approaches to Marijuana Action. Sorry?
Could you repeat the question? So everybody...
Yes, the gentleman was wondering how much of the tax revenue a city like Ann Arbor would get if it were to decide it wanted to allow the facility to be located within the city limit. So this is how the revenue that would be collected from the excise tax would be divided up. 35% for schools, 35% for roads and bridges, 15% to municipalities where a marijuana business is located. So that would be the answer to your question. 15% of whatever is collected in the excise tax, and 15% to counties where a marijuana business is located. And now the next question people usually have is, well, how much money would that be? And the estimates vary depending on whether you're for or against this. Not surprisingly. So those who are against are estimating that the revenue from the excise tax would be $48 million a year. Those who are in favor say no, it'll be millions, more than that. So that's what we know so far. Other questions about the proposal? Yes, Marissa's going to bring you a mic so we can all hear your question.
Can a city decide whether they want to allow that kind of business,
Yes.
or is it just
No,
anybody?
it's up to the city to decide whether or not they want to allow that business in their city limits.
Is there any data about criminal increase in crime from the other states? I mean, I can imagine it could go either way.
I haven't seen that data, and we were not provided with it, so I'm sorry, I don't have that. It might be that if you were to go to those websites of those who were for or against, you would get some information. No other questions? Okay, well, let's go on to Proposal 2 then. The Citizens Redistricting Commission. Now, many people are familiar with voters not politicians. You will not see any reference to voters not politicians in the ballot language. Now, as I mentioned, it was contentious sometimes within the State Board of Canvassers when they got ready to decide what the ballot language was going to be. And of course, those who were for the proposal wanted it worded in such a way that if you never heard anything about it till you went to the ballot box and you looked at your ballot and you read it for the first time and you said, hey, that sounds good to me, and then check it off. Yes. And those who were against, of course, want you to, when you look at it, if you look at it for the first time, to read it and say, I'm not voting for that, and say no. So that's why there's this tension between the pro and the con, and each side is trying to convince the Board of State Canvassers of one thing or another. Now, and this is a good example. It's called the Citizen Redistricting Commission. Originally, Voters Not Politician wanted the word independent in their proposal because they've talked a lot about the Independent Citizen Redistricting Commission. But they lost on that one. The board did agree, though, the Board of State Canvassers did agree, after much persuasion, to put in the word citizen. So that finally won the approval of the Board of State Canvassers. Remember, it's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. So this is what you'll see on your ballot. A commission of citizens with exclusive authority. So that would mean the legislature could no longer draw the maps for district boundaries for the Michigan Senate, the Michigan House, and the U.S. Congress. They do that every 10 years when the census numbers come out. They last did it in 2011. Those are the maps we're living with now. The next census, of course, is 2020. And so either the legislature or this Citizen Redistricting Commission, if the ballot proposal passes, will take the census data and draw the new maps. And they're for the Senate and the Michigan House and the U.S. Congress. So that would create a commission of 13 registered voters. And they would be randomly selected by the Secretary of State. And people would self-identify when they applied as either being Republican or Democrat, or neither. And the pool would be created in 2 ways. The application would be put out there by the Secretary of State, and any of us who were registered voters could apply. In addition to that, the Secretary of State will send out 10,000 applications to a random selection of registered voter in the state of Michigan. Now, the formula they use will be geographically weighted so that somebody in Houghton Lake has just as good a chance of getting on it as somebody from Ann Arbor. So now we're going to have 13, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 5 who say they're not affiliated with either party. Now, because in Michigan, you don't have to declare a party when you vote in the primary. You have to ask, well, no, you don't. You can only vote for Republicans or Democrats in the primary. You can't vote mix and match, so to speak. But you don't have to say, okay, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. And so the only way they can tell whether people are Republicans or Democrats are if what you say. But then there are a lot of people who are prohibited from serving. People who are currently in office, people who are running for office, their employees, relatives of those folks, lobbyists. They're trying to remove the politics from the process. And then there would be a list of criteria that this commission, if it were elected, if the proposal passed, that this commission would have to use when they draw these maps. The districts would have to be contiguous. For example, we here in Ann Arbor could not be in the same district as Mackinac Island. Okay? You have to be geographically linked in some way. They have to be equal population. That's a decision by the Supreme Court back in 1964. One person, one vote. So each district has to be equal in population to the others. And it has to reflect Michigan's diverse population and communities of interest. Now, communities of interest is where it gets a little tricky, because what is a community of interest? It's not the people in the Democratic Party that you belong to. It would be people who share some kind of economic area or some kind of cultural grouping. And the districts cannot provide disproportionate advantage to political parties or candidates. As you might know, currently there's no law against that. And so whatever party's in power, whether it's the Republicans or Democrats, draw the maps in such a way that they're going to get in power again. Because, right, they're going to have enough seats that they can win a majority of the seats for the legislature or the congressional delegation. But this is prohibited in this, or would be prohibited if this proposal passes. And then it would require an appropriation of funds for the commission to operate and for commissioner compensation. Now, this is somewhat modeled on the California model, if you're familiar with that model. What they ran into in California is that they didn't include a requirement that funds be appropriated, so then the legislature refused to fund it. So then they had that battle. So in order to prevent that from happening, they have written right into the proposal, require an appropriation of funds so that the commission would be able to hire experts and prepare materials and rent meeting halls so people could come and listen to them and so forth. And also they will compensate the commissioners a certain percent of the governor's salary, which today would be $39,000 something. All right, so how would this work? Okay, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, 5 who are neither. Politicians, consultants, and lobbyists could not serve. They would have to conduct their business in public hearings that are open to input from the state, and all the proposed maps and the methodology to create them must be submitted as public reports, and everything down to the variables used by the computers, the software, would have to be public information, and they have to follow a prioritized set of criteria. Now that's important because by the time you follow the first 2 or 3 criteria, you might not be able to follow the last one. Now, for example, the last one is compactness. And you might have a district that's not very compact in order to meet all the other criteria. What does it take to approve the maps? A minimum of 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 independents on the commission must approve the final maps to keep the political party from controlling the process. So this is a philosophical change from letting the legislature do it, where actually the party in power does the maps because they have the power to do it, to one where an independent, meaning independent from the legislature, Citizens Redistricting Commission would actually draw the maps with public input and hearings and so forth. So there are timetables, of course, when you would have to apply for the selection process. Now, I mentioned that you self-identify whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or neither, but the leadership of the House, the majority and minority leadership of the House and Senate would each get 5 strikes. It's kind of like jury selection, where you can challenge certain number of people on the jury. So they would each have 5 strikes, or 20 altogether. So if somebody was on there, Jane Doe was on there and list, and she said she was a Republican, and the Republican majority leader had been told, Jane Doe is not a Republican, she's a Democrat. Okay, so he'd strike her name. So that's kind of what they're using as a way to try to keep people honest when they self-identify whether they're Republicans or Democrats. As I mentioned, they would hold public hearings. They have to follow certain criteria, and then they adopt the redistricting plans. If this were to pass, they would use the census data from the 2020 census, and they would draw the maps in 2021, and it would take effect with the 2022 election. Maybe I should stop right there. That's a lot of information. Any questions so far? Yes, in the back. I think Marissa's got her little microphone there.
An observation, it will take 6 votes out of 13 to actually approve the final.
No, that's a minimum.
Oh.
And it has a majority. Well, it should probably say this differently on the slide.
Okay.
It takes majority to approve, of which at least 2 Republicans, 2
okay.
Democrats, and 2 independents.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned, I think I saw it on the screen, that people would be selected randomly. I have sort of pulling out of a jar,
Yep.
turning a lottery thing. What's random?
Well, actually, they would use a computer program. And there is the qualified voter file in the state of Michigan, which lists all the people in the whole state who are registered voters. So that would be fed into the computer, and then you'd have a computer program that would ensure geographic distribution, as I mentioned. And then it would spit out randomly 60 Republicans, 60 Democrats, and 60 independents. And then, the leadership in the House and the Senate could each get their strikes, so that would take out 20. And then they do another random selection to get the 13, but they have to be 4 from the Democratic pool, 4 from the Republican pool, and 5 from the independent pool, and those pools can never be commingled. So it is a little bit complicated to explain, and maybe that's more information than you were looking for. Okay, other questions? Okay, well, what do people say? If they want you to vote yes, they're saying, well, the voters should choose their politicians, not the other way around. And allowing politicians to draw their own districts is a conflict of interest, puts the fox in charge of the hen house, so to speak. And when the politicians have the power to draw voting maps, they have the power to handpick their voters, depending on how they draw those maps. These are all the people who signed up to support this proposal. I know you can't see it, but if you go to the votersnotpoliticians.org website, they have them all listed there. And of course, there are people who are opposed. Jim Holcomb, who is Executive Vice President and General Counsel for the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, issued a statement in the Michigan Chamber press release saying, well, this proposed districting ballot proposal would drastically rewrite Michigan's Constitution by removing the voice of the governor, legislature, and courts in the redistricting process. Because right now, it's a bill, right? So it's just like any other piece of legislation. Introduced in the House and the Senate, they have hearings. If they choose to, they vote on it. If it passes, it goes to the governor. That's how we get our maps right now. And of course, that would take them out of that process. Replacing these branches of government with a randomly drawn 13-member commission that would be unelected and unaccountable. Okay, that's what we were just talking about. place an inordinate amount of power in the hands of the Secretary of State, who is, of course, partisan. She's either, or he is either elected as a Republican or Democrat, favoring one political party over the other, so forth. So that's what the people who are against it are saying. And those who are against it are Protect My Vote, which is a ballot question committee. They don't have a website. And then, of course, the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and the Michigan Republican Party, which is what generally happens. I want to point out that while the Republicans are doing it here, the Democrats are doing it in Illinois and are infamous for doing it in Maryland. So it's not just that one party does it, it's just that whoever is in power does it. This is how they keep themselves in power. And because of all the improved technology and software, the maps can be drawn so much more accurately in terms of whether you are going to have enough Republicans or Democrats in your district to win or not. And so the maps have become quite egregious. Now there's also a lawsuit out there, and just to make it clear, the difference between the two. We have the ballot proposal that I was just explaining, with the Citizens Commission drawing the maps and doing all the things that I just explained. The other approach is the lawsuit that the State League of Women Voters filed in federal court. We go to trial in February of 2019, asking the court to declare the current maps unconstitutional and to require that new districts be drawn. Now, if successful, this lawsuit would affect the districts for the 2020 election. So that's the difference between the two. The lawsuit deals with the current maps, and it would not change who draws the maps. It would just require that the maps be drawn to be less gerrymandered, so they would be constitutional. Michigan is one of the worst states when it comes to how gerrymandered the districts are. And the proposal, of course, takes a very different approach, takes that power away from the legislature, gives it to a citizens commission, and that would affect the 2022 election. They're not incompatible, they're just two different ways to try to bring about redistricting reform in Michigan. And both approaches deal with the congressional districts and the state house and the state senate. Okay, before I go to that, any questions about Proposal 2, Redistricting Commission, how it would work, what it would do? Okay. All right, the third ballot proposal is a voting rights constitutional amendment. The previous proposal was also a constitutional amendment. The first one, remember, was a legislative initiative that creates a piece of legislation and one that the legislature could deal with in a future date if they wanted to, but they can't mess, so to speak, with a Proposal 2 or Proposal 3 if they pass, because they amend the Constitution. All right, now the little card that I hope you picked up when you came in lists the various rights that would be added to the Constitution. Authorize automatic and election day voter registration, no reason absentee voting, straight ticket voting, legal requirements for military and overseas voting, and post-election audits. All that would be added to the Michigan Constitution. And if you're a registered voter, you would be automatically registered to vote when applying for, if you're a U.S. citizen, you would be automatically registered to vote when you apply for or renew your driver's license or any other business that you conduct at the DMV. You would be able to register to vote up to and including Election Day. During the 2 weeks before, you would have to show proof of residency. You could obtain an absent voter ballot without providing a reason. Now, you might know that in Michigan, the only people who can get absentee ballots are people who are over 60, or people who have a disability that keeps them from getting to the polls, or people who are going to be out of town, or people who lie and say about they're going to be out of town, which is a misdemeanor, and I'm not encouraging anybody to do that. So it's very limited in terms of who can get an absentee ballot, but if this were to pass, any registered voter would be able to get an absentee ballot without providing a reason. And it would allow people to cast a straight ticket vote when voting in a partisan general election, if they so choose. That's the 100 words that's going to be on the ballot. And this is just the same thing, really. And the pro side, the people who want you to vote, are saying, well, every eligible person would be able to vote and every vote should count. It makes voting much more accessible, secure, and fair. Allows for a democracy to better serve all Americans and for the laws to better reflect the will of the people, and everyone deserves to have their vote secure and counted. And there are the supporters. And again, if you go to provotethevote.mi.org website, you will be able to read all this. The people who are against it are saying, well, this would undermine the election integrity by removing safeguards. By allowing voters to register on Election Day, it wouldn't give clerks time to run the existing process. And there'd be the same problem with the no reason absentee voting. And some of these proposals are already in law, and their inclusion in this proposal only serves to mislead voters about its true purpose, and the proposal would be a disaster for election integrity. Now again, everything that is in here, now this was provided by Protect My Vote. Who's against it? Protect My Vote, which is a ballot question committee. They have no website. And then I have some election information to share. Okay, any questions about Proposal 3, adding certain voting rights to the Constitution?
I was wondering if you knew who had said or what language they're referring to that's already in legislation.
What they were referring to that's already in legislation?
Yeah, it was 2 slides ago.
Okay.
So on the 3rd bullet point.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I think if we go to, all right, let's just take these one by one. Here's the ones, this is the 7 things that would be added, okay. Protect the right to vote a secret ballot. There isn't actually anything in the Constitution except to say that the legislature should make some kind of arrangement for that. There is a law that says military service members and overseas voters should get their ballots in time for their votes to count, although we've had reports that doesn't always happen. It would provide voters with the option to vote straight party. That was legislation, but the legislature before the 2016 election removed the straight party ticket option, and then somebody sued them and went to court, and the judge issued a stay. So in 2016, people could vote the straight party ticket option if they wanted to. But now the judge has lifted that stay, so in 2018, you will not be able to vote the straight party ticket option. So providing the voters with the option to vote straight party comes and goes depending upon which legislature is in office. Automatically registering citizens to vote. Right now it's an opt-in system, and this would make it opt-out. Allow a citizen to register vote anytime with proof of residency. The current law is you have to register to vote 30 days before the election. So the deadline to register to vote, if you want to vote in November, is October 9. This would change it so that you could vote, or you could register any day before the election and up, including election day, and still vote that day. And of course, number 6 would be different, because right now you can't vote absentee unless you meet those criteria that I talked about. And this says all registered voters will be able to vote absentee for 40 days prior to election day. And it would require, 7, it would require an election audit, which is not currently state law. Does that answer your question? You're welcome. Other questions? Oh. So I just want to put a little, yes, sir. You had a question? Just a minute. Marissa's coming with a mic.
Thank you. So if somebody came on election day to their polling place, they could register at their polling place and vote then?
Correct.
They don't. It isn't like you got to register somewhere else. You can register at the polling place. And then is there a setup for of challenge then for those who are concerned about integrity?
Well, it wouldn't really be any different than what we do right now. You can register to vote. I can register somebody to vote, take it to the county clerk's office, and if you filled it out properly, you'll be a registered voter. The only catch is, unless you do it at the city clerk's office, you're going to have to vote in person the first time you vote after you're registered. But as soon as somebody's registered, it's entered into the qualified voter file. And anybody across the state who has access to it, all the clerks and so forth, would immediately see that you were registered in Ann Arbor, for example. So you couldn't go from city to city to city, because they just pull it up and they'd see you were already registered. Question back here? Could you just wait for the mic, please? Then everybody can hear what you're saying.
Do you think there would be a major difference between when people still having the ability to vote straight versus not having it anymore? Because wouldn't they still be able to just go through and check all the people within?
Yes, I think, of course, people can vote one of two ways, or they could have up until this election. In Michigan, we've had this straight party option for 125 years, so this will be the first time in 125 years that you can't vote a straight party ticket option. But you've always had the choice of either voting straight, checking off, I want to vote just for Republicans, and then automatically every Republican who's running for office will get your vote. Or you can go through and you might say, well, I want a Republican for this and Republicans for that, maybe a Democrat for that job. It's your choice. The effect is, because a lot of people like to vote straight party, if everybody has to choose individually, unless they've done their homework, when they get to the polls, it's going to take quite a while for people to make up their mind, and the lines will be really long. So that's one reason that many of the clerks have come out and said that they support the straight party ticket, because for people who want to, it speeds up the lines and makes the voting experience more efficient. Other questions? Okay, well, as I said, the last day to register to vote is October 9th, so if you're not a registered voter, be sure that you take care of that. Absentee ballots are available at your clerk's office. I haven't gotten mine in the mail yet, but it's supposed to come out this week. Of course, election day is Tuesday, November 6th. Polls open from 7 to 8. You cannot vote a straight party ticket. And remember to go to the non-partisan section. There's a lot of judges and all the proposals will be located. So you have to turn your ballot over. And so that you don't forget about the rest of the ballot. There are 3 ballot proposals on the Ann Arbor ballot. So I'm going to take a few minutes to review those 3. I'm sorry I don't have any handouts for that. And share with you the pros and cons I've received. And again, these are comments that people who are for or against these proposals have submitted to us. We're not responsible for the veracity of them. We did not fact check them. So Proposal A talks about the library lot. Designate the library lot as an urban park. Proposal B, change how a vacancy in elected office is filled. And C, would enact a tax for park maintenance and capital improvements. So those are the 3 that'll be on the Ann Arbor ballot. So Proposal A would change the charter. It's an amendment for the city-owned public land bounded by 5th Avenue and William, Division, and Liberty. That's right out here, of course. Everybody knows where that is, right? To be designated in perpetuity as an urban park and civic center commons, to be known as a center of the city by amending the city charter. Shall the city-owned public land bounded by those streets be retained in public ownership in perpetuity and developed as an urban park and civic center commons known as a center of the city by adding a new section for the purpose as explained above. That's what's going to be on the ballot. You vote yes or no. The proposal will amend the charter, and it got on the charter by citizen petition, just like the 3 other ballot proposals for the state that we were talking about, all got there by citizen petition. You have to have a certain number of signatures. It would amend the charter in order to convert the library lot to an urban park and a civic center commons in perpetuity. The supporters have told me they're in favor of it because it would stop the privatization of public land. It would let people decide how to use the public land. And Ann Arbor residents in polling favor downtown parks and open space. Who supports this proposal? The Ann Arbor Committee for Community Commons, the Library Green Conservancy, and business associations for the State Street and Main Street. There are also opponents. The majority of the Ann Arbor City Council supports developing the site instead. Proceeds from the sale used to fund affordable housing. And the council actually authorized the sale to Core Spaces for a 17-story building. And there would be the loss, if this were to pass, of potential tax revenue and jobs. Who opposes it? The majority of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you've been following the council, you know not everybody was in agreement. A group called Protect Our Future. As I mentioned, there will be a forum on October 25th, Thursday, October 25th, when you can hear the people who are for and against this particular proposal give you their views. And you can ask them questions. And the league will be in charge of the forum. Second one is how a vacancy in elected office is filled. This would alter the procedure for filling a vacancy. And currently it's filled by appointment of the city council, regardless of how long is left of the term. If this amendment is approved, a vacancy that occurs with more than half of the term remaining will be filled by appointment until the next regular city election, at which the rest of the term will be contested. The reason that this is being offered by the city council, and they put this on the ballot, is because, as you might remember, the terms of the people on city council went from 2 to 4 years. So now, if you have a vacancy, it's not just the remainder of a 2-year term, it's the remainder of a 4-year term. And that's why there's a provision for an election if more than half the term is remaining. And so then the appointed person would serve until the next primary election. It was passed unanimously by the Ann Arbor City Council, and currently there's no opposition. I was kind of amused when I saw that this afternoon. I was looking at it, and the person who created this PowerPoint was probably tired of doing this and just decided to have that X float away. I thought that was pretty funny. Or maybe it wasn't intentional, I don't know. Okay, so proposal C, also put on the ballot by the city council, is a parks maintenance and capital improvements tax, which would authorize a tax for maintenance and capital improvements. Tax up to 1.1 mils for park maintenance and capital improvements 2019 through 2024 to replace the previously authorized tax, which expired in 2018. This one would raise in the first year an estimated revenue of $6 million. I don't know why that question mark is there. In accordance with state law, a portion of the millage may be subject to capture by the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority and the Washtenaw County Brownfield Development Authority. I have a little more information on that. Let's see. Okay, here it is. Raises over $6 million in fiscal year 2020. 70% of it would be used for park maintenance, and the other 30% for capital improvement. I have no opposition to that. Questions? Yes.
Do you know how the proposed tax compares with the one that just expired in 2018?
Whether it's an increase in millage or not? I don't know if it's an exact replacement. That's a good question. I'll try to find that out. But that wasn't in the information that I received. Other questions? Sure. You have one?
I will.
Okay.
But
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. I thought I had asked, but I can certainly go back.
I'm going to steal the mic from Frank.
Okay.
I just I wanted to clarify or add that there's a group that it should be listed among the supporters.
Oh, okay.
Because the law requires that you form a ballot committee.
Yes.
So there actually is an official ballot committee called the Ann Arbor Central Park Ballot Committee that supports the proposal. So that's actually the sort of the official campaign in.
Okay, say
asking
that
people
again,
to-
please, Will.
The Ann Arbor Central Park Ballot Committee is the official ballot committee. So that's the vote yes committee, and I think there actually is now an official vote no committee, but I don't remember the
Okay.
name. I think
Well,
it's different.
I'm
than the
sure
one
they'll
that's
let me know.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And I know the library is not really doesn't look favorably on campaigning in the library, but if people would like information from the campaign, we're here and we have information. And so if you want information and you want to come to us, we can
I
provide
think
you
you'd probably have to stand outside the library door.
well, somewhere
outside the library door. That's why we just give educational presentations here. Other questions? Okay, great. Don't forget to vote November 6th.
This program was recorded on October 1st, 2018, at the Ann Arbor District Library.